Thank you for joining us for tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Mike Haridopolos. My name is Kaylee, and I will be your moderator this evening. If you'd like to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time, and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, press *6. Here's how tonight will work. The Congressman will start with a brief update, then we'll open it up to your questions live on the call. You will have up to 1 minute to ask your question. We will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. Now, without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce your Congressman, Mike Haridopolos. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. It is great to be on with our team, and of course, excited to talk to folks back at home. Good evening. I am up in Washington, D.C. tonight, and I really appreciate you all joining us for this telephone town hall. We expect up to about 10,000 people on the line, and I love doing this because it's my way to keep you informed of what's going on in Washington, D.C., and of course, keeping you informed of what we're doing to work on things in the district and making sure that we're hearing directly from you in a thoughtful way so that many people can ask and I can answer questions. As you know, Florida's Space Coast just made history with the successful mission of the Artemis II rocket system. We're so proud of the folks at NASA and, of course, those 4 brave astronauts setting history, going further from Earth than ever before. And we are on target now to actually land on the moon in 2028. Also wanted to update you on our casework. We've returned this year almost $5 million to constituents who have issues with the VA, the IRS, and other programs. And since I've taken office, we've returned over $17 million, again, for folks who have issues. So never hesitate to call our local office, our Washington office, if you need help with constituent work. And we're happy to report on important issues such as the environment, roadways, you name it. We brought home more than $101 million in federal grant money recently. So to get started, we're going to talk about getting Washington on track, keeping America safest in a dangerous world, and making sure Florida continues to lead in space, jobs, and innovation. Remember, your voice matters. Tonight is about you. I want to answer your questions, concerns, and ideas to help guide my work and deliver real results. So with that,
our first question is coming from our pre-call polling survey from Cynthia Acosta. Cynthia asked, VA claims are taking upwards of 7 months or more to process a claim. What can your office do to support veterans who are having to endure such long wait times to receive their benefits?
Well, one of the things that most importantly we've done is we've actually gone to the VA in Orlando, and I just recently held a meeting with the VA in Brevard County, and I heard firsthand some of the legitimate concerns that are coming in. And I appreciate the question being asked because it's so vital. Our own son is in the United States Air Force, and the VA is an important promise we've made to our active and, of course, retired veterans. What we have really tried to do is often change a couple of things. One is that we want to give people, or they don't have to go to the VA. If their wait time is too long, they have now the ability to actually go into the private sector and get their services done. The second component, of course, is that we have not let go of a single person who's either a doctor or a nurse at the VA. We know how vital those services are, and we're doing everything we can to expedite some of those delays. That said, if you have questions, you can always feel free to call our issue office on constituent work. That would be 321-632-1776 if you have a VA issue and you feel like you're not getting the service you deserve considering your service to the country. Again, thanks for the question, and we look forward to our next one.
Our next question from our pre-call polling data is from Jeffrey Smith. He says, what is being done to stop the cities and businesses and residents from dumping contaminants into our lagoon system? Has anyone looked at removing the lock system in Cape Canaveral to allow the lagoon to recover?
Well, protecting the Indian River Lagoon is one of my key issues that I talked about for the last few years. I wanted to make sure we build on the good work done by the county. And, of course, we can't forget that we actually are taxing ourselves in order to clean up the lagoon. That said, I was able to secure a record $14 million last year to improve water quality and reduce pollution in the lagoon. This is about long-term restoration, not temporary results. And we know that when the lagoon is healthy, not only it support jobs and tourism, but it also keeps the value of our homes. And so this is one of my top priorities. I'm a member of what's called the Estuary Caucus in order to advance restoration, and we're putting more money into actually shovel-ready projects as opposed to some of the research that has been spent in the past. This is part of our record-level federal investment in the lagoon, and we're coordinating with not only our local governments, but also state governments as well. As many of you know, I served in the state Senate, and I have great familiarity with those programs, and so we're making sure that everyone has the opportunity to help out the lagoon and coordinate it in such a way. And one of the real challenges we face is that in the northern part of the lagoon, it's a very static waterway, meaning there's not like they have down in Sebastian where there's an inlet. So there's been a lot of discussion of how we might create a better way in which to get that water flow going, and it's something I'm working closely with many different environmental groups to make that happen.
Our next question is from Kyle Durfee. When are we going to see relief at grocery stores, gas pumps, and health insurance? I'm a first responder with 3 kids and obviously don't make much as it is. I'm in a constant struggle and was really hoping this administration would be different.
Well, I try to control what I can control, and one of the things that we wanted to make a promise to you, Kyle, was the idea that we wanted to keep the promises we made back in 2024. If you remember, of course, we had massive inflation just a few years ago. It got as high as 9%. And so we wanted to help persons who are hardest hit by inflation. Those are people who earned overtime, who earned tips, and, of course, worked a lifetime in order to get Social Security benefits. And so, as you know, in the big tax bill we passed in July, we cut taxes on overtime, tips, and for most people on Social Security. In fact, each Social Security recipient gets a $6,000 deduction in order to help it make ends meet. As far as gasoline is concerned and those prices, we've been making remarkable progress in the simple idea that we are producing more gasoline than we did in the past. We are opening up those opportunities around America. And as you know, we also have now made inroads in Venezuela. Well, we'll see a lot more production coming from there. We are going through a challenging time right now, as we'd all admit, in finally taking on the Iranian government that has been plaguing not just the Middle East, but the entire world since 1979. And as many numbers show, thousands of Americans have died because of what the Iranians have done. And we're optimistic that we can end this conflict quickly, bring stability to the Middle East for the first time since the late 1970s. But the good news is that we are no longer reliant on Middle Eastern oil because we're increasing our production. And when we reduce energy costs, that also means lower costs at the grocery store. So we're moving in the right direction, still a lot of work to do. We're happy also, of course, to see that interest rates are down, and we're also happy to see that the stock market, where over half Americans are in the stock market, and it's around 50,000 today. So a long way to go, but I think we're making progress, and I think once this Iranian conflict ends and we reduce the threat from Iran, which is not only with nuclear materials, but they have missiles that can be fired 2,500 miles away. So it's an ongoing crisis, and I'm confident that we can bring it to success given the amazing, extraordinary performance of our military.
Our next question is from Boyd. What is being done regarding the welfare fraud in Minnesota?
Well, this is just an absolutely shocking endeavor. I've never seen such blatant fraud, and the fact that some local governments are trying to cover it up. We all work incredibly hard to pay our taxes, and to see the billions of dollars wasted here is just, I can't even describe it in words how angry we all are. And for every dollar lost to fraud is a dollar not serving the American people, or could have been given in tax relief so you can spend the money as you see fit. We've been holding a series of course, committee meetings, but most importantly, what they have done in states like Minnesota and California is they have shut down those agencies or those fraudulent companies from operating at all, and many have been prosecuted and sent to jail. But we need to use new technologies to identify these as quickly as possible. And it is one of the reasons why we've been so aggressive in this new administration from finally going after fraud, which sadly I think the previous administration kind of turned a blind eye to. Accountability is essential, and I'm confident that what we have done as a start is in the right direction, but you're going to see a series of committee meetings over the summer, and we're going to continue to go aggressively after those companies that have defrauded the government, meaning the taxpayers, and I think you'll see even more prosecutions because, again, this cuts at the very fabric of America and undercuts what people work so hard to pay their taxes.
Our next question is going to be from Ruth from Palm Bay. Ruth, you are live with the Congressman.
Good evening, Congressman. What is it that you can do from your office to get the overcrowding stopped, the overbuilding, until at least Brevard County can get all of its infrastructure redone because everything is failing here? So have all this building going on is an oxymoron, really. You can't build unless the infrastructure is complete.
Well, Ruth, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. And one of the things that we need to kind of think ahead of, as you know, I've lived in Brevard County for over 30 years, and it seemed like they built the houses and then tried to build the infrastructure around it. What I've seen in a positive way, as you probably know, in Palm Bay, they built the Beltway out there before a lot of the people got out there now so that we can get a little bit ahead of the game. And I think you're seeing a better way in which they're building in areas like west of 95 and Vieira, where they're building the infrastructure first as opposed to the housing, then the infrastructure. These are the things we're trying to find complementary ways of doing. And what we do on these same type of partnerships is, again, where I've told the locals we need federal, state, and local contributions here. And the way that I have worked my transportation plan is that I don't rely on Washington to make the decisions. I talk to the local transportation organizations, and that's how we come up with what's called a 5-year work plan so that we can get ahead of those challenges you're facing. Especially if you live in Palm Bay, you know how crowded those are in different areas around Minton Road, Palm Bay Road, et cetera. That's why we built the Beltway to try to alleviate some of that. And as you know, going back many years, we've actually widened I-95 going from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and of course the widening of US 1, and of course the escape routes or the evacuation, which you might call it, at US 192.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, press *6. Next up, we have Michael from Vero. Michael, you are live with the Congressman.
Hello, Congressman. Great job. What are you doing in the way of economic development in District 8, specifically down in my area, Indian River County?
Well, Michael, thanks for your question. As you know, right now, our county is doing much better than it was than about a decade earlier because of the growth in our space industry. A lot of us were so concerned when the shuttle went away that those jobs might be lost. The good news is with SpaceX, Blue Origin, ULA, Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris, Lockheed Martin, these are all companies that are hiring right now because of the increased need we have for space companies. Down in Indian River County, we're doing much the same. I spend about 2 or 3 days a month down in Indian River County talking to those business leaders and seeing how we can diversify that economy, and so it's no longer just more of a bedroom community. Just a couple weeks ago, I was at the CVS facility where they have hired thousands of people in which to work there and trying to diversify, and also making sure that our school system is training kids for the jobs of the future, not of the past. And that's why I visited so many high schools, and we're putting the dollars in place so they can actually get the training they need so they can stay in the community and not have to leave the community should they choose to go right into the workplace after high school. Beyond that, what we have done is really try to incentivize business creation beyond the tax cuts that I talked about before for overtime, tips, and Social Security, we've also given a lot of incentives for businesses to make capital investments. Instead of writing off those over 5 years, we passed a law where you write it off over 1 year, which is helping a lot of people out where they wanted to make that capital investment, couldn't afford to, but by writing it off in 1 year, it's been pretty successful. And finally, of course, as I mentioned before, the other thing to make sure that the property value stays strong, because your home is probably your biggest investment. That's why we're making so many investments in the Indian River Lagoon. And finally, we're also working on the sense of trying to bring housing costs down. And the best way you do that is to increase the supply of housing in a smart way, making sure you have the infrastructure in place. But as you know, when 10 million people came into the country illegally, it caused the housing prices to spike because you simply have too much demand and not enough supply.
Our next question is from Paul. We just watched astronauts go around the moon for the first time since 1972. Do you feel that astronauts launched by NASA are safe?
Well, Paul, that's a good question. And we know the challenges that space has become, and since its infancy, as we like to say, unfortunately, space is hard. It's the reason why the United States is the only nation to successfully land an astronaut on the moon. Very challenging. We know about some of the tragedies, whether it be Columbia or the Challenger explosion, let alone some of the other challenges as we built out the Apollo program. But the good news is that the number one priority for NASA is safety. I am not only proud to live on the Space Coast, but I am the chairman of the Space Committee, and NASA is committed to safety. And, of course, we all watched that amazing launch just a few weeks ago, and I was there in person to see the American success story in broad daylight. And to see those astronauts return home safely is such a wonderful thing to see. That said, we are going to continue our effort to go to the moon. As I mentioned earlier, before I took your call, Paul, we think we can land successfully on the moon in 20 and 28, and that means we're going to create what's called a moon base, and that moon base will allow us to eventually make our way to Mars. But while we have that moon base, we want to make use of some of the natural things that are found on the moon, and that means things like helium-3 that helps with energy production. And as you know, there is water on the south pole of the moon. We believe we can use that hydrogen and oxygen to build and eventually build rockets so that hydrogen and oxygen would eventually be the propellant to take us to Mars and beyond. It is safety first, and that's why I think you see NASA's a little bit slower than SpaceX and Blue Origin since they don't actually fire astronauts into the space most of the time. They're usually just launching satellites, and it's one of the real thriving industries in our area.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time, and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, press *6. Our next question from our pre-call polling data is from Anthony Wallen. He asked, how do you get the SAVE Act passed? Without voter ID and fair elections, nothing will get better.
The SAVE Act is one of the most important bills we can ever do. Sadly, in 2016 and 2020, there was a lot of people who were concerned about how the elections were conducted. Republicans and Democrats were like, as you know, even when they counted the Electoral College votes, Republicans and Democrats, depending on the election, actually protested some of the results. What I think we need to do to re-energize democracy is to build confidence in our elections. And the best way we can do it is some common sense procedures. We want to make sure that only Americans vote in an American election. And of course, you have the simplest idea, which is you need voter ID, making sure the person who is actually in front of you is legitimate. And that's something we already passed in the House of Representatives. And we think, or we're optimistic that they'll try to pass it in the Senate as well. Again, voter confidence is essential. And when you see some of the fraudulent situations, sometimes delayed voting results, it erodes the confidence in our democracy. And so that's why I'm a proud sponsor of the bill. We passed it out of the House of Representatives. and I really hope that the Senate would pass it. But as I think everybody knows on the call, you need 60 votes, not a simple majority, but 60 votes in order to bring a vote up in the United States Senate. And at this time, at least, the Democrats are blocking it. I hope that they will change their mind, allow for voter ID, and always confirm that only Americans vote in American election. After all, it's about fairness, transparency, and trust.
Our next question is going to be Loretta from Melbourne. Loretta, you are live with the Congressman.
Hi, Mike. You remember me? Loretta Myers.
Hey, Loretta, how are you?
Hey, good.
I know exactly you are. Yeah, thanks for calling, Loretta.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm very, very, very proud of the job you're doing. Mike, my question is, why isn't Medicare A and B covering the RSV vaccine and the new shingles vaccine? They're over $300 each, and Medicare A and B does not cover them.
Well, thanks for your question. I think it's a very fair one, and that's one of the decisions that Medicare makes as they look at the different policy standards. As medicine changes, and as you know, my wife is a doctor, and as
she was my doctor once.
There you go, and she's a good one, I must add.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. And so I think what they're always looking at is what is covered and what is not. And this is one of the things, since you brought it up, this is the first I've heard of it, so thanks for bringing it to my attention. I will talk with Medicare and Medicaid to see why this particular is not covered. And since it's not covered, how we can get that in the system. It's something that more and more Americans are facing those high costs. Hopefully we can bring in more competitors and bring down the cost. And in general, we're looking at ways to reduce prescription drugs. And one of the ways we do that is called MFN, Most Favored Nation. That means Americans shouldn't have to pay higher prescription drug prices than other major industrialized countries like France. And that's something that I support, and I think it's the right thing to do because, again, Americans already are paying for that research and development. They shouldn't have to pay twice by having to pay higher prices once these new things come in the market. So we will look into that, and if you don't mind, send us an email, and since I don't have your phone number in front of me, we'll get back to you personally on that particular issue.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks, Mike, and again, you're doing a great job.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you so much.
Okay.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, press *6. Our next question is from our pre-call polling data, and this question is from Mary Sumner. With higher gas prices due to the conflict in Iran, why is the U.S. selling oil to foreign countries rather than lowering prices for Americans first?
Well, I think it's a fair question. Gas prices are a very volatile issue. And again, as you know, we are making incredible progress until this latest conflict with Iran. You saw the price of gasoline come down dramatically because we're producing more supply. And I think we need to continue to do so. And it doesn't mean you have to drill off the coast of Florida. In fact, I believe just the opposite. There are major areas, whether it be Alaska, there's shale pipelines, and of course now in Venezuela are all opportunities in which we can increase the supply. And that is the best way to bring down costs. And as you know, the world needs oil, not just the United States, and so the market is across the world. What we are going to do, I think, once this Iranian conflict is over, you'll see gas prices come back down again, and I think long-term we're even in a better spot because that when that Venezuelan oil truly comes back online, we'll be in a much better position. That said, remember this oil that's coming out of the Middle East because of the Iranian conflict, about 90% of that goes to places like Japan, India, and of course China. And I think what you're going to see in the long term is a successful way in which America is now a lot more self-dependent. It's no longer dependent on other nations. And I feel confident that this is the right direction to go. And I've always believed in what I call an all-in solution. It's not just gasoline, but making sure that the different energy supplies are one which the best ROI is found for our country. And I think by having that diversity, we're in a better spot. But we always want to make sure that we are not so reliant on other nations to produce the energy we need, and especially as we come into new technologies like data centers, which are going to need that much more energy.
Our next question is from George from Melbourne. George, you are live with the Congressman.
Yes, thanks for allowing me to ask my question. Wanted to know, why are we putting a lot of money in detention centers when the goal is for, they say, to deport? We're putting a lot of money in the process of doing something that we don't need the money for. We don't need to put extra money into a process that, if you do the process correctly, you don't need it. So why are we spending all this money for detention centers?
Well, thanks for your question, George. And as you know, it's been estimated around 10 million people entered the country between 2021 and 2024. We had, candidly, probably an open border. And not only were they let into the country, but they were dispersed throughout the country. As we handle this massive number of people, we're trying to give them the ability, to, of course, to state their case. But once their case is stated, we believe that they've broken the law. They need to be deported. What we have tried to do, George, is take, of course, go after what we call the worst of the worst offenders, those people who have committed violent crimes, including murder, rape, child molestation, you name it. And so that's where the focus has been. There's actually a website, if you haven't looked at it, George. It's called wow.dhs.gov. And on that website, it actually lists the worst of the worst offenders. Sadly, there are over 2,500 of those names listed in the Florida section. And, of course, that means tens of thousands of those 10 million have, unfortunately, not only committed a crime coming here, but, of course, once here, committed some horrific acts. And that said, we need these detention centers to hold them before they are eventually sent off. In some cities across the country, they're what are called sanctuary cities. Sadly, law enforcement does not assist in rounding up some of these illegal aliens who have committed some violent crimes, and that's why you've had some ugly incidents like you saw in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which was so tragic, where 2 people were killed. But this is a law enforcement issue. I'm happy to report that since we've shut down the border and have really gone and after these violent offenders, the crime rate in America is down over 20%. And by securing the border, we'll actually spend less on social services programs that got so expensive as these new people came in. And remember, as I think someone asked an earlier question about housing costs have gone up because when you have 10 million people enter the country, you're increasing the demand, but there's not enough supply. And so we are very concerned about that, George. And I appreciate the question, but unfortunately, you need to set detention centers like that because, again, there's so many of them, and you need to give them the ability to state their case before they might be deported.
Our next question is going to be from Fernando in Merritt Island. Fernando, you are live with the Congressman.
Thank you. Yeah, Congressman, I just want to thank you for a great job you're doing. I live right around the corner from you. I don't know if you remember meeting me, but I appreciate the great job you're doing. My question is, I think we're building too many apartments around our area here. I don't know why we're building so many apartments instead of homes, and I'm very concerned about that because that would probably drive down the prices of homes, and it's not good for the economy around here. So I'm just very concerned about that. And what do you think about that?
Sure, Fernando. Good question. Well, big picture-wise, as I think we all recognize, there is an affordable housing shortage, but we want to do it in a smart way. And on these type of issues, I'd never like to pass the buck, but as you know, those permits and rules are set by the local government. And those apartment complexes are ones which the county commission will decide whether there is a need for it, and that's something they lobby the county commission for, with, of course, a lot of state input. What we have tried to do more than anything else is try to drive down interest rates, and as you know, the interest rates have come down a bit, and we're also trying to, again, increase the supply in a smart way of building homes. As you know, there's a lot of duplicate regulations, especially on permitting, which means it's time and money. And the more time you have to spend dealing with the government, the more expensive that product becomes. We're also, of course, in driving down some of the inflation costs. That means the products that we buy to build homes should come down. But as far as the apartments, and I have seen a lot of them really jump up in recent years, that's something that I think we should have a really thoughtful conversation with our county commissioners and try to understand what's the right balance in which to have, because though how it's, as you know, that when we can drive down the cost of housing, meaning buying a house, that'll mean that less of a need for apartment complexes as well. So we're trying to strike that balance, but this is going to be one that, again, it's a local issue, much like property insurance is a local issue. Believe me, you do not want Washington, D.C. messing with that. You can only imagine what some might do there. But, Fernando, great to hear from you again, and hopefully I'll see you in public sometime soon.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just press star 3 on your phone at any time, and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, press star 6. Our next question is from Glenn in Melbourne. Glenn, you are live with the Congressman.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a follow-up on the Save America Act question you answered earlier. It seemed like your answer was the House has done their job and you're hoping the Senate will do theirs, but there's no agenda item that's more important to America than election integrity. And so my question is, what are you going to do to pressure the Senate into passing it and get it to the president's desk?
Well, Glenn, we've tried everything, and as you probably know, we passed this bill many different times, trying to get the Senate to move forward. We're trying to also negotiate with the Senate and trying to say, if you want this passed, you're going to have to pass the Save America Act. The president has been incredibly strong with this. You have, I think, almost every Republican in the country supporting this finally. But we need 7 more Democrat votes in the Senate. As you know, they're using what's called a filibuster in order to stop the vote. And what we are trying to do is find different leverage points, including what's called reconciliation, potentially to get this change made. And the other one might be where we need to move forward, and maybe we need to say this cloture or filibuster rule has kind of outlived its usefulness. As you may know, Glenn, I'm a former history teacher at our local college and the University of Florida as well. And the filibuster is designed not to stop completely voting on things, but to delay votes so that people can get better information before they vote. It's really been abused, and I think that when you use this type of power to stop a vote, you're actually depriving the American public from what they want, because, as you know, this is probably the most important issue from the 2024 election, this along with immigration, and it's the reason why I have done everything, at least in my power at this point, to try to get it done. And I think we need to just put even more pressure on the United States Senate, because to your point, Glenn, it is necessary, and if we erode the confidence in our election, we lose our democracy.
Our next question will be from Kate from Sebastian. Kate, you are live with the Congressman.
And thank you for all of your hard work. My question is
Thank you,
this.
Kate. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Getting back to the fraud issue, are you willing, along with your with the rest of Congress, do you think that the Republicans will shout from the rooftops about the actual convictions that occur? Because when the fraud happens, we don't hear anything more about it as far as follow through. And I think the American people would love to know that somebody was in fact convicted.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kate, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to see more convictions. I mean, sadly, we need to do this. It's like the best way to stop violent crime, is to go after those violent offenders. Same thing here. These are financial crimes that crack at the heart of America. And to see yourself working so hard and then see your money stolen is unimaginable. And it also reminds me of why it's so important that we lead in the Congress by example. For example, I do not trade stocks. I think that's how we gain confidence back in our government. I've said that before I got elected. Once elected, I don't trade stocks, and I've been one of the sponsors to get rid of that practice because we need to lead by example, and we need to focus on what really matters as opposed to stock trading. I've also been the one who's been pushing for the highest ethical standards, and that includes if a member of Congress is found guilty of sexual harassment, they should have to pay for those damages, not the taxpayer. It's just, again, common sense to me. And I think also what is in line with this is the idea of term limits. I think we should be citizen legislators, and I think that just like we have in Florida, term limits has worked very well. We balance budgets in Florida. Our economy is doing well in Florida, and people are voting with their feet, meaning they're moving from states that are not so ethical or don't have the same standards as far as making sure there's not fraud, is why people are moving to Florida. So I try to do it my own way. And I guess one last thing I just mentioned, since we've had this partial government shutdown for DHS, I'm not getting paid until we finish this shutdown. I think we need to lead by example, and the best way to do it is to put your money where your mouth is.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time, and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, please press *6. Our next question is from our pre-call polling data. It is from Samantha. How do you plan to vote on H.R. 2289, American Broadband Deployment Act?
Well, I think broadband is very important, and we have allocated from the Biden years plenty of money on broadband. And so I think the money that exists today is one that we need to use before we expand that program further. And with the use now of course, Wi-Fi and the amazing things like Starlink and some of those competitor companies, we shouldn't have to pay so much for broadband. You're seeing a lot of other countries, they don't even do that type of wiring anymore because it's so darn expensive. And using things like Starlink and others would not only reduce the cost, but also potentially the time. So I'll look more closely at that particular bill, but any spending should be based on what was going on in the prior years, not spending new dollars for broadband when we have new technologies that will reduce the time. Because think about it in the most general way, when you lay broadband, that means you have to buy the land, you have to go out and get the permitting, you have to hire all of those workers to put it into place before you help those folks. And some of these folks might not be able to afford some of those high broadband costs. So there are other options, especially in more rural areas that can be so expensive. So I want to strike the right balance on that particular piece of legislation.
Our next question is Claire from Melbourne. Claire, you are live with the Congressman.
Yes, thank you for everything you've been doing for us. Very much appreciate that. I was wondering what the current status is of birthright citizenship.
Yeah, sure. With birthright citizenship, that is being fought out in the courts right now. We have legislation in the Congress that not only was I a major sponsor of the bill, but I've been securing a lot of other members of Congress to sponsor that bill, because what birthright citizenship was kind of an anomaly or a unique situation when we first formed the country. Of course, it's a much different situation now where there is actually tourism where people can come in and though being a citizen of a foreign country, they'll come and have their child here in order to get dual citizenship. That's clearly not what the founders intended, and I'm cautiously optimistic that the Supreme Court will side in that direction, recognizing that birthright citizenship is counter to logic in a modern world. And if we fail in the Supreme Court, I would be supportive of a constitutional amendment saying that birthright citizenship is something that, again, is out of sync with modern times. It was again, a logical thing when we formed the nation, but today you're seeing that some people are abusing this at the expense of the taxpayer and undercutting of citizenship in general.
Our next question is going to be from Samantha from Melbourne. Samantha, you are live with the Congressman.
Hello, Congressman Haridopolos. This is Samantha, the daughter of Meg Phillips from Melbourne. and I wanted to ask you about any practical solutions that you have for the health of the lagoon. Last time we talked, you said something about nanomachines, which is not a good short-term practical solution.
Sure. Well, Samantha, we're looking at all different types of things. As you know, the Save Our Indian River Lagoon program has been in place for about 10 years. It's secured over $500 million. I think it's over $600 million in taxpayer revenue to clean up our lagoon. They're making some progress, but there's been still some discussion about building an inlet somewhere in Brevard as an option, or at least a weir. And for those people who don't know what a weir is, it'd be almost like an underground area in which there could be more water flow between the Atlantic Ocean and our Indian River Lagoon. The inlets that's, of course, north of us in places like New Smyrna, or south in the southern part of the district, which is Sebastian Inlet, those waterways look so much different than what the central part or northern part of Brevard County looks like. And so we're looking at a lot of options. Yes, one of the technologies that has been used successfully in western states is what they call nanotechnology. That's where you use these nano bubbles to lift some of the materials off the bottom of our river. It's been experimented. I think there's actually private sector money that was put in at Dixie Crossroads recently to see if that might be a solution. But we need to try everything because clearly it's not being cleaned up fast enough. I have secured a lot more money, as I mentioned before, approximately $14 million from Washington, which is a record number by twofold. And we're going to continue to get the resources there, but we need to find this solution. And one of those other, of course, solutions there is what we're moving from septic to sewer, especially close to the waterways. But as you know, Samantha, those are also very, very expensive, but it's necessary in order to reduce the number of waste going in. And we're also looking at fines for cities that aren't taking care of their wastewater that sometimes gets dumped in when there is an issue. It happened recently in the town of Indian Harbor Beach and Satellite Beach. So we're looking at these different options. And but most importantly, I'm looking at the science because we need to find a more creative solution, a more cost-effective solution than simply dredging out of the Indian River Lagoon.
Our next question is from Phyllis from Cocoa. Phyllis, you are live with the Congressman.
Yes, good afternoon. I am so happy about this event this evening. Thank you for holding it, sir, and appreciate what you're doing. I have been an educator. I just retired, being an educator for 41 years, and 31 years of those as a school psychologist in Brevard County. And my question and concern, now that I'm retired, I'm on a budget, as you will know eventually, not for many years ahead. However, I'm concerned about the property taxes and the homeowners insurance costs that are exorbitant. And I know that people have been trying to work on these items for years, but nothing is really happening that I can foresee. What are your suggestions, or what can you do for us?
Well, first, Phyllis, thank you very much for being a leader in our classroom. As you know, our schools continue to improve because of persons like yourself. I've been so proud of the efforts being made. I've been visiting a lot of schools lately, and they're really creating the classwork necessary to go right into the new economy. And 31 years is a heck of an accomplishment, so well done. And as far as the fixed income issue, let me just talk one thing. One is, as you know, eventually, if you haven't qualified for Social Security, at this point, we did, of course, reduce taxes on Social Security. After all, there's the highest tax for about half of America. And if you own your own business, you pay both sides of that Social Security tax, which reaches about 13%. That said, on property taxes and property insurance, property taxes are what the state legislature sets. It's actually set in the Florida Constitution. And to make changes on property taxes, not only does the legislature have to pass it, but then the voters have the final say on property taxes. The last time we made some of probably the biggest change was 2008. You might remember I actually sponsored that bill. I was the author of it. That's where if you move, you're able to take what's called your Save Our Home tax savings with you, so there's not such a big tax bite when you move. And that has saved Florida taxpayers around $30 billion since 2008, if not more. And so we try to help in that way. We've also tried to get some veterans tax breaks, et cetera. But if you go to the property appraiser's offices, they'll walk you through different tax exemptions there. But again, that is a state legislative issue. It is not set by Congress. But there is a big debate going on right now on property taxes in Florida. Some people have said, let's eliminate property taxes completely and replace it with a higher sales tax. If they do this, which might happen in the next month or so, it would be up to you, the voter, to make the final decision. And then finally, as I mentioned to an earlier caller, as far as property insurance, that too is a state issue. They are the ones who set those. We've seen those rates stabilized for the most part over the last year. They've not gone down, and it had to do with a lot of some of the tort reform measures they've made. But my advice would be, one is that if you haven't done so already, a lot of insurance companies are offering incentives to strengthen houses, and they'll actually pay you to do some different things to improve, especially your roof structure. But both of those issues you bring up, which are big issues, are both handled by the state legislature. And so what we have tried to do on the federal level, of course, is reduce taxes on Social Security, overtime, and tips. And, of course, last year when we passed the big tax bill, we stopped what would have been the largest tax increase in American history, because had we done nothing, it would have reverted to our old tax rates, which would have been about 22% higher. So thanks for your service to the community, Phyllis.
Our next question is from Carl from Vero Beach. Carl, you are live with the Congressman.
Hey, Congressman, I'm a registered Republican. I'm proud to vote for you. I've been quite happy with you. And like you, I've also been a history professor. And
oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned your success in balancing the state budget in Florida, which is fantastic. But it seems like the balancing the federal budget's almost been forgotten. I'm deeply concerned about this, and I wonder what is being done, and when can we finally see a balanced budget at the federal level of the United States? And if I may kind of quickly say unrelated, I contacted and I thought I got a meeting with your office on behalf of my NGO, but I never got a follow-up. And I would love to meet with you on behalf of my NGO, but again, that's unrelated to my question.
Sure. Well, Carl, first, thanks for your service in the classroom. Our local number is 632-1776. Just reach out to our team, and I'm sure they'll get a meeting. Pam runs our office there and set something up, but if I'm in town, I'd love to listen in as well. As far as the balanced budget, this is, if I had one magic wand, it would be to pass a balanced budget amendment. It was the ultimate tool that we used on the state level to make the tough decisions, because there's a difference between what you want and what you can afford. What we did, of course, this year do is work on what's called the DOGE, and that's where we started to look in some of these spending programs, and we found some real stinkers, and we were able to get rid of some of those. The other thing that we really have been trying to do is identify the fraud. And yeah, as you've probably been talking about, maybe in your class, Carl, it's unbelievable the amount of fraud that was taking place right in front of people's eyes. And it's pretty obvious, whether it be Minnesota or California, they were turning a blind eye to some of this obvious fraud. And it's reason why not only we need to try to somehow claw back these dollars, but we need to fully prosecute these people. They were knowingly doing things. And what's been even scarier is that clearly, when I say turning a blind eye, I know when I used to work in state government in the state Senate, we had investigators who go out to all these facilities, especially healthcare and education facilities, to make sure they were safe. So when they realized that these were fraudulent, clearly in states like Minnesota, they identified these issues, and someone, for some reason, stopped the investigation. And it's the reason why not only some of these operators, but I think when we really peel back the onion here, I think you'll find some state officials were fraudulent as well. And it's just a tragedy, because it is the patchwork that keeps America strong, a strong democracy that we can count that your vote counts. And second, that the government looks out for your taxpayer dollars. That's why I've really pushed what I also did in Florida, was called Transparency Florida. Every dollar we spend should not only be online, but how we spend it and who got the money. I think it's a great way to bring sunshine to how we spend money. So, Carl, we'll look for your call again, and we'll see if we can't get a meeting with you sooner than later. Thanks for calling in.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time and you'll be added to the queue. If you'd like to be added to Rep. Haridopolos' weekly newsletter, press *6. Our next question is from Karen from Merritt Island. Karen, you are live with the Congressman.
Is Karen there? Oh,
Yeah,
sure. There you go. I can hear you now. Can start over, please? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying thank you for taking the calls and for serving our county. And so I have a question. I have a small business that has been on the SLS and Artemis contract since 2013. And so we're hearing that the budget is going to be reduced for NASA, and also that the core competencies are going to be transferred to civil servants. And I was wondering, what does that mean for contractors and especially for small business contractors?
Sure. Well, thanks for the question, Karen, and thanks for your service to making Artemis happen. It's an amazing success. It was the linchpin of our future space programs, and we're very grateful for your part in that work. I think both of those issues you're bringing up are more than legitimate. As you know, last year we heard much the same as about potential cuts, and in the end we were able to fully fund NASA at over $24 billion. And I think you probably remember in the big bill, beautiful bill as they called it, or the working families tax cut back in July, we not only got the $24 billion for NASA, but we got almost $10 billion in additional dollars because we know we need to win the space race. As I like to say in a very straightforward way, we can't be number one on Earth if we're number two in space, and so we need to move in that direction. As far as the local contractors and this idea that NASA might try to absorb some of them, I literally am meeting with Jared Isaacman tomorrow about these legitimate concerns. I always believe that the private sector can do things cheaper than the government, so I need to understand what his plans are. And as you know, in the end, it's up to Congress to decide what monies are spent. And so just like we were able to preserve the NASA budget in order to win the space race, I want to understand why he thinks it's better to make these private sector jobs government jobs. We always want to give NASA the best and the brightest, but not at the expense of companies that are doing a fantastic job like you described on Artemis. And so I think we're going to find a solution on that. I want to talk to Jared about it. I love what he's doing and the enthusiasm he's brought to NASA, but some of these new ideas I think we need to really take a closer look at. So we'll continue to do so, and don't hesitate to call our office if you have questions or if you hear other things that we can be helpful with.
Our next question is from Alan from Titusville. Alan, you are live with the Congressman.
Hello. Thank you for taking these calls. Appreciate it. As you know, the International Space Station is planned to be deorbited in 4 years, throwing away billions of dollars of hardware and all the years of effort the astronauts and those of us on the ground put in to get that put together and operational. My question to you is, will you add a line item to the NASA budget to save the space station by moving it to where it's needed, initially in lunar orbit to replace the canceled Gateway station, and eventually to Mars orbit?
Well, Alan, good question. And I would say this. We had hearings a few weeks ago, and as you know, I chair the committee. And my expectation is until we have an absolute replacement for the International Space Station, we should keep the space station in orbit. That's why we are going to keep it alive for a few more years at a minimum, raising it up, of course, so that it does not face the potential, of course, falling back down to Earth. We think that's a logical thing to do. The U.S. has done a very good job of keeping the ISS, or International Space Station, in good condition. And as you know, there's a Russian component to that as well, and we're going to make sure that's kind of spruced up along the way. But until we want to keep continual space presence, and until we have a replacement for the ISS, my recommendation has been to spend the extra money, keep the ISS in place, not only, of course, for that always having astronauts there, but also, of course, some of the new technological breakthroughs that can happen because of the research done in space. And so as we retire or move away from the Gateway program, I think you're going to see the lifespan of the ISS increase until we have a replacement that we feel confident would be a success.
We have time for one final question. Our last question is going to be from David from Vero Beach. David, you are now live with the Congressman.
Do you have to
David?
pass a bill?
Oh. Yeah.
Hello?
Oh, yeah, there, I hear you now, David. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for everything you're doing. I was just wondering, do you have to pass a bill when the people in the Coast Guard and other people don't get paid, that you guys don't get paid?
Yeah, good question, David. I think this is absolutely ridiculous that considering the threats we have around the world, let alone the conflict with Iran, we should fully fund Department of Homeland Security. It is one that is vital to our country. And as you know, in the House, we passed this 4 different times. And unfortunately, one of the reoccurring themes of our conversation tonight has been the Senate is unable to pass things because of the 60-vote threshold. So where we stand right now is that the Senate has passed their version without funding border security, which is probably the biggest issue of the 2024 election, and without funding ICE. Those are the agents that are responsible for removing violent offenders inside the country. So where we're at now is that they're going to send over that bill that does not fully fund DHS. We're going to add to it border security and ICE. And the way you do it to get around the 60 votes is what's called reconciliation. That's where you only need a majority of the votes in the Senate in order to pass it. It's the same thing we did last July in order to make some of those tax cuts we talked about earlier on our call. I support fully funding it, and if it takes reconciliation to get it done, I'm for it, because these people work hard every day, whether it be at airports or in the military, the Coast Guard, FEMA, you name it, Secret Service. I think we should fully fund DHS. And what I have done, I know it's a small token because it's not the law yet, I have not taken a paycheck since the government shutdown began, because I think if we can't get our job done, I shouldn't be paid for it. And so we're waiting to see when that passes, and I'm going to continue to push for full DHS funding. And in the meantime, I'll try to lead by example, just like I don't trade stocks, and just like I think that if congressmen break the law with sexual harassment or so forth, that should come out of their pocket, not out of the taxpayer pocket. So good question, David, and I'm cautiously optimistic we can pass that, whether it be this coming week or the following week, so that those folks who do our good work at DHS can get paid for their good work to protect our homeland against increased threats, whether it be from countries like Iran or, sadly, if someone came across the border over the last 4 years, 10 million strong. So thanks again for the question. That said, as we wrap up tonight, I want to first say thank you. I think we handled a bunch of calls as best we could tonight. I can't thank you enough for the honor you give me to represent our community. I know I'm incredibly proud of the work done by NASA and a lot of our defense contractors to give Artemis success, and of course the building things like the Golden Dome. But at the end of the day, our goal is to hopefully find success in Iran, bring down these prices like we need to, and take away that worldwide threat that Iran poses, considering they can fire missiles 2,500 miles away. Tonight we had over 7,800 people on the call. I wish I could take all your questions, but such is how we do things. But if you have not signed up for my legislative updates, which come out once a week, I tell everybody exactly where I stand on the issues. And if you have some suggestions also of people who've done some amazing things in our community, please let me know, because we like to highlight them as well and do that. So remember, if you press *6, you can subscribe to that newsletter, and we'll do everything we can. So, and also stay on the line if you have a message that you want to leave for me. If you didn't get to ask your question, we have people handling those questions, and they'll get those answers to you. So signing off, I want to say thanks again. As you know, this year we're returning over $5 million, $17 million since I've taken office, to people who have earned Social Security or VA benefits. And I'm just so proud of the team that we have, and they're there to really take in that information, see how we can be helpful in every way possible. And if you like, you can, if you didn't get to listen to all this tonight, this will be on our Facebook page, Rep. Mike Haridopolos, if you didn't get to listen for the whole hour, and maybe some of your questions might be answered there as well. And so thanks again for the opportunity to serve the Space and Treasure Coast. I do it with great pride, and I'm just so proud of the work that you are all doing back at home to rebuild our economy after the shuttle went away. And but I can't do this alone. I need your input, your questions, because as I like to say, the best ideas come from home, not up in here in Washington, D.C. So thanks again for being engaged. and for staying informed and your very thoughtful questions tonight. Have a wonderful evening.